Right then, we had a wee bit of technical issues there, but I'm going to get started. This is the free live training for members of the Life by Design group. The Life by Design group is exactly what it says. It's for people who want to take control of their lives and be proactive in the way that they shape their life and the way that they live it. Okay? And these are tips and ideas that I come along with, and the training that we come along with here are from the various sources that I've studied over numerous years and coached and I've found that work. So tonight we're going to look at your personal values, and they're part of a bigger thing about you and knowing yourself that we're going to go into in a few of these units. Now, I've talked there about units, and that's something we're going to come back to later on in the this training. I'm mentioning where you can find out the resources and further training for each of these topics that we're talking about. So let me just pull up, oh, that's running already, that's great, the presentation for tonight, and we'll get started. So I'm going to share that, and hopefully the wonders of technology, it will work. There we go. So here's our personal values training slides. So what I preface this training by saying why they're important and why you need to know them, and we're going to go into that. So we're going to look at why your values have an impact on you. So here's why values matter so much, really. Now, this is taken from some NLP training, and it's a fairly common diagram for anybody who's ever done any NLP, but don't worry about it. There's a lot of stuff on it. I'm just going to explain it very briefly here. So essentially, you sit there and you've got all these external events coming in through your ears, eyes, your touch, all your senses, all that stuff. And eventually your brain makes sense of all of this stuff, and out of that comes your response or your behaviour. So you'll see here, we've got various times and things that affect what that behaviour is going to be. And I'm not going to go into all of them tonight, but I'm only going to concentrate on the values and beliefs one. But we've got time, space, matter, and energy, the language we use, got our memories, although I think somebody's got a typo in there, decisions that we've made in the past, or we make meta programs. I'm not even going to touch on that because it's a huge topic. Our attitudes, and our attitudes are somewhat made up as well by values and beliefs, and some of these things overlap. But tonight we're going to concentrate just purely on this bit here, and only on half of it, and the values, because these values have a major impact in our life. So why do they have this impact? Well, it really comes down to this feeling of whether something's right or wrong. Is this just? Is it justice according to our values? You know, if you see a situation happening, you might be asking yourself, is this justice? Is this a just situation or not? And you'll do a lot of that subconsciously as well. You probably won't actively think about it, but it'll come to you subconsciously. Does it feel right to us? Does the behaviour that we're experiencing and that we're actually participating in feel right to us? Sometimes when you feel it's off, then, and we'll come on to that more a bit later, it won't feel right at all. Now, these things are kind of on a continuum, on a scale, if you like, if you pardon the pun, you know, of values and weighing things up. Sometimes some things can feel a little bit wrong to us, sometimes it can feel way wrong to us, okay? And I'll give you some examples as we go through this training tonight. So where do they come from? Well, they're often formed early in life, and they come from our influencers, you know, our parents, our teachers, and our peers in early life. You know, maybe up until the point, you know, you're maybe, I'd say by about 16, you know, and the reading I've done as well confirms that about 16 to 18, you've pretty much got your first set of values in place. All right. You probably won't know what they are at that point in life, but you'll know when something feels right or wrong to you. You know, you might have a sense of justice. You might have a sense of what's right and wrong in everyday things that happen, or maybe things you see on the news or whatever. and you won't realise, but it's part of this sensing of right or wrong is down to your values. So here's some examples of values that I've pulled from the worksheet that I'm going to direct you to later on. All right, so it's by no means exhaustive, and neither is the list on the sheet, because you could go on for days listing them, although it's fairly lengthy, the list that's on the sheet that I'm going to point you towards later on. But you've got family. You know, families are obviously important to me now as a married man with 2 kids. Family is an important value. Challenge. You might want to be challenged in life. You know, it's about what do you feel, how challenged you want to be in life. For some people, it's belonging. You know, is there a sense of belonging, or is there a sense of prosperity that you want to have in your life as well? And you'll see that some of these are things that would link to their motivation as well, and how to do things. So that's just some very brief examples. Don't worry about trying to figure yours out just now. We're going to come on to that later on. So I was trained years ago in executive, if you like, profiling as well. And this is some of the other values that we would have looked at in a business sense, you know, as an employee or a director or whatever. And there's things like your aesthetic, you know, the things for things to be in harmony, etc. Your economic value, how much is it about money to you? How much is it about being an individual? How much is, you know, are you a political animal or not? Are you altruistic? Now, by the way, these aren't my scores. These are just an example from the manual that I was given at the time. How altruistic are you? How regulatory are you? And, you know, how much do you like to be regulated or not? And how theoretical? I'm quite highly theoretical. Certainly the last time I did this, I think my theory was something like 80 odds or 90 something. My economic was really, really low the first time I did this, and then it changed. And we'll come on to how values can change a bit later on as well. So what do they affect? These values that you've soaked up from someone and you've somehow put into your brain. Well, they affect your decisions, often subconsciously, and we're going to go through each of these things in a minute. They affect your behaviours, because as we saw in that earlier diagram, you know, you have all this input coming in, you make sense of it in your brain, and then you react to it in some way. So that's your behaviours. And we'll talk about reacting and proactive later on as well. They affect your level of stress that you experience in life, and it's something that certainly I experienced in a big way when I went against some of my values later, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And conversely, of course, they affect your happiness and your joy, and we'll talk about how that happens as we go through these topics. So let's look at the first one. Is Brian's having a think here and trying to make a decision. Okay, so how do our values affect our decisions? Well, I've said before, they have a subconscious influence on behaviour and emotions until you know yours and proactively set out to find out what yours are. They have the subconscious influence on your behaviour and your emotions, because you'll react to something, you'll see something and think, oh, that's terrible, you know, that's awful, you know, and you'll think, well, you know, maybe I need to help, and that would be maybe a philanthropic way of responding, a compassionate way of responding. And compassion is another value that we can look at and decide if it's important to us. If we're aware of our personal values, we can make better decisions for us. So as I got to know what my personal values were, and one of the ones that I looked at was my monetary value, my financial thing, and I realised that it was way too low. I was giving away far too much, right, left, and centre, you know, in my business as well as personal life. And I decided, okay, I needed to change that. I needed to start charging for my services. I needed to start charging more for my services, and realising that money was important. You know, I had a family to look after, so they kind of linked to some of the other ones, like family that I mentioned earlier on. So we can make better decisions for us. We can actually say, oh, okay, I need to do. And of course, it makes what it feels right for us to do, you know, and decide to do, and our decisions about where our life's going to go. And if you're going to decide where your life's going to go, you really need to know your personal values. So our behaviours. What do we feel to be right at the time? Okay, Because if we are doing certain activities and they're going against our values, then they're going to feel wrong, okay? Equally, if they are in alignment with our values, they tell us what's right for us, okay? If it's in alignment with our values, we're going to feel that our behaviours are better. You will feel more comfortable with yourself, certainly, if your behaviours are in alignment. As I said, it's often subconscious, this process that happens. It's not a, all right, that's affecting the value of this, so I'm going to do that. Until you become very aware of your values, and you've done some of the exercises I'm going to talk about later on, you're not going to know this stuff. Okay, you're just not going to know this. So the best way I can think about doing this is, okay, your level of philanthropy, as I mentioned earlier on, you know, if you saw, say at the time of recording this, there's the fire disasters in Australia. You think, oh, that's awful, you know, and some people might think, oh yeah, I've got to donate or I've got to help in some way. Some other people might sit there and think, no, not my problem. This is somebody else's problem over there. They should fix it. And that's just down to your personal values. It's not for me to say what's right or wrong. It's just the way you are. I have certain behaviours that my friends wouldn't do, and they have certain behaviours that I wouldn't do, purely because of our values and the things that we've experienced in our lives and our upbringing. Stress, right? This is a big one, because if you're out of alignment with your personal values, you are going to experience stress in a big way in your life. Small to a big way, on that continuum as we mentioned earlier on. Because when you intrinsically feel something's wrong, that's when you're stressed. You know, if you feel your behaviours and things in your environment around you is not linked to your values, you're going to feel stress. You'll certainly feel some frustration with things that are going on. You might see it in daily politics, you know, things that are going on, and if it's against your values, you'll feel incredibly frustrated, you know. There's all this stuff about self-determination going on in various places, you know, in Catalonia and Scotland and all these places, and a lot of these people feel very frustrated. And on the other side of the argument, they're very frustrated that people are still capping on about it. It's because of their personal values. And that's what makes them feel stressed in this sense. And in some instances, that can actually lead to anger. You know, if your personal value are being challenged on a regular basis, you're going to feel some frustration and maybe even some anger about that. So I said to give you an example. And the example here I'm going to use is my last employee role. I've mentioned this before. I went into a company that recently been taken over, and the company culture went entirely against all of my values. It was very much dog eat dog, try to get to the top. It wasn't very cooperative at all. I'm very cooperative in my values, very collaborative. The company's purpose in itself went against my values because it was to make money from people being sick, which to Americans might sound, excuse me, entirely normal. But here in the UK, having the NHS, we feel that, you know, everybody should have access to free medical healthcare. Excuse me. So I felt incredible stress because of that. You know, my values were misaligned to the very things that I was out there marketing as a marketing manager. So there's just a simple example of how that can manifest in your life. But it can also be something very much smaller. They can all build up. It can be lots of little things that build up in your environment around you that end up leading to this misalignment, frustration, and anger. I said, obviously, it relates to your happiness as well. So if you're aligned with your values, you're going to be very much happier. It's just kind of common sense. If you're misaligned, you're stressed, unhappy. If you're aligned, you're going to be much happier in life, which is why it's really important to get to know your values, because then you can start to do some proactive decision making about how your life's going to look. And I keep talking about designing your own life and writing your own life story. And of course, it's really important then to do these things. But what about our values? Do they change over time? Do we have, are we stuck with them forever? Is it just the way they're going to be? Now, I mentioned that I had to change my value around money, my monetary financial value. It can happen over time. You know, we've got this timeline here shown in this little diagram, and then something will happen that can help you change your values, or will perhaps subconsciously change your values for you. And it can be major life stage change. It can be, you know, when you're young, one of your values is about having fun, you know, having fun all the time. And sometimes that can outweigh some other values to the detriment of maybe, you know, your work ethic or whatever. You know, but then it might change, or you might have had that all along. These aren't set examples I'm giving you here, it's just ideas. So major life changes come along, you know, maybe you get to maybe your 30s and you're settling down or whatever. Maybe, you know, I don't know. But certainly for my example, it would be me moving in with a new wife and eventually having children. And it's these kind of catalytic events that can change your values. You know, if you see it a lot with people who are suddenly diagnosed with terminal diseases, and heaven forbid anybody here should get into that. But you see it a lot that suddenly it becomes about not so much about maybe not so much about monetary things, but maybe more about just enjoying what the time they've got left, fun, fulfillment, relationships, those kind of things. So for me, I said I'd give you this example. My money story. Before I had the family, before we had kids, my economic value was something like a 10 out of 100, right? Average being about 65. So you could see that I wasn't really thinking about money at all. It wasn't an important thing to me in any way, shape or form. But once I had a family, I realized I had responsibilities to provide for this family that I decided I was going to have. I had to make enough money, you know, to look after them, along with my partner, Fiona, to do that, to look after them. And my value for my money value, my financial ethic, came into play a lot more. So before the family, it was tiny, and post family, you know, now it's a lot higher. It's important to me to make money, but to look after my family, to give them the things they need in life, and do some good with the money that I make as well. So I promise to keep this fairly short tonight. So getting to know your values. Right, there's a free resource for you. It's already in the group, and I'll show you that now if I can. Let me just see if I can do this fancy thing with, I'm going to stop that share, and what I'm going to try and do is share the, where is it? Did I close it? Ugh, dash, I think I closed it. I think I've closed it. But anyway, if you go into the Life by Design group, there's a tab at the side that says Units. Now, Unit 3 is the one you're looking for, all right? And in Unit 3, you're going to find this Personal Values, Discover Your Personal Values worksheet, all right? And it gives you instructions through it. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because there's already a video in there in Unit 3 to tell you how to do all of this stuff. But we'll quickly run through it. And these are just ideas here. So the first step is to kind of have a think about, okay, what kind of values might I have? There's lots of different types of things here that we talked about. There's charity, empathy, fidelity, family. That might be some of mine actually that I'm picking out there, just looking at it. You know, enjoyment. That might be, as we said, somebody who wants to enjoy their life. Devoutness for somebody who's spiritual or religious. Gratitude, I think, is the one most of us like. Some people would go for adventure, some would go for tranquility, serenity, peace. Impact, there's another value you might want to have impact on the world. Also, going through these quickly, it gives you an idea of things to get down and you kind of brainstorm of what's maybe important to me. And then the next stage is to come down and whittle that down. And I'm not going to go into this because it tells you how to do it in the other longer video in there. And then again, get down to your top 6. And even then, I would think 6 isn't enough to keep in your head at any one time. And then think about prioritising them. So what comes first? Is it money or family? And this is where we get into this work-life balance stuff and all that great stuff as well. So you start to see where it has an impact in your life. But once you know these things, you'll start to understand where your behaviours are coming from, and you will actually be able to be more proactive in what you choose in life and how you choose to respond to things in the situation you intend to get yourself into. So I really would say go and have a look at that, and really spend some time on it. You might have to spend, half an hour or so at it initially, come back to it and play about with it. And as I said, they change over time. So have a play with that resource there. You can also get that on the resources page on the Brian Canavan website. You can sign up and it'll send you that as well. But if you're here in the group, you've got access to it in Unit 3. You've got the PDF in there and you've got the actual longer explanation as to how to use that worksheet. So it's already there for you. Excuse me. And if you want to get extra brownie points out of this stuff, go and have a look at, if you go to the resources page on briancanavan.com, there's a button at the top that says have a look at my free online training too. And this link down the bottom, if you could be bothered typing it all in, will take you there as well. But that button on that page will take you to where you can find this Journaling for Success course. And one of the ways you could use this Journaling for Success course is to look at how in alignment with my values am I feeling. So if you've got that list of 6 values, you can actually put that into your journaling and say, okay, what did I do today that was in alignment with that value? Or what was in misalignment with that value? And that can start to help you track, where stress might be coming into your life, or where you can maybe bring a bit more happiness into your life as well. Now, I said I wasn't going to keep you long tonight, so that's it for tonight. Really, if you have any questions on this stuff, please do ask them here in the Life by Design group, or you can email me at brian@briancanavan.com if it's something a bit more personal. And I'll endeavour to answer any questions you have on this stuff. Have a play with the worksheet that we just mentioned, the Discover Your Personal Values worksheet. It's a really good little resource to go through, and that exercise to go through and think, okay, what would I prioritise one over the other? What comes top? What comes second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. Once you know these, you're going to be able to be more proactive about your life, to be able to say, this is what I want from life. And when situations present, maybe like a new job offer or something that happens, you say, no, I'm not feeling comfortable with that. And I know I won't be comfortable with that, so I'm not going to get involved in it. And maybe even subconsciously, your brain after a while will take that in if you keep that list somewhere that you can see it. And it will say to you, no, that doesn't feel right. Don't think you should be doing that. And that's a great thing, because you'll start to know what it's all about. You'll start to know what your life's all about in terms of your values. Now, there's a whole other exercise where we go from values and beliefs to purpose and spirituality and all that as well in my main trainings. But that's enough for you to be getting on with just now for values. So I hope you've got some value out of that. Value, pardon the pun, didn't even mean that one. Let me know what you think of it, and if you think of any other ideas for topics you would like discussed, explore what's in the units within the group already. If you think there's any other ideas you'd like discussed in one of these kind of half-hour trainings, let me know and we'll put the most popular ones together. So that's it for tonight. Go and have a wee look at your personal values, and I'm sure once you know what they are, and you can live more in alignment with what your values are, you're going to have a much happier time. That's it for now. So just suffice for me to say thank you for joining me, for anyone that's joined me. I can't actually see on this. I stopped using Facebook because it was a nightmare for sharing screens. And I think some people have had a problem getting into this training tonight, so my apologies for that. But it's always just the one reminder. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and I hope to speak to you all soon. Bye for now.